This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. And welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard. We're happy to be back with you today. We've got another excellent podcast show for you today. We've got an awesome guest that's going to talk to us about some really important things going on in the world around us. We're talking today about workforce wellness. If you're a leader in an organization, how do you know your organization, your workforce is well or not? How do you know that? How do you monitor that, manage that? How do you navigate through it? And if they're not well, if people aren't well, the organization's not functioning well, and it's managed chaos, what do you do about it, right? How do you convert from one thing to another? And so today we've got an expert on our show that's going to break this down and talk about the dynamics that surround how to run a well organization, a healthy organization, a proactive, highly performing organization. So today we've got the honor and privilege of having a workforce wellness and culture expert that literally wrote the book about this topic. The book is called Run Into the Roar. I haven't read that book yet, but it's on my list to buy next. It looks really good. I was reading a preview of it here recently, and it looks really good. Today, we welcome John Robertson to the show. Let me introduce John here. John is the CEO of a company called Fort Log, is a leadership coach, an author, a trainer, and a keynote speaker that's helped organizations transition from crisis mode to a more proactive management style and environment. So John, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, so am I. I think you're going to be able to add a lot of value to folks. I think, as we were talking a little bit earlier, people are looking for positivity today, right? There's so much negativity, so much drama, so much stuff circulating in the noisy world that we live in. They're looking for something positive and a way forward, and you certainly provide that.
Thank you. And I mean, I think it was a song. I can't remember where I heard it, but years ago, there was something that said, everybody's talking, nobody's listening. and we have just brought it to life. Like, I still remember, and I use personal examples when I'm speaking as well. But one of the best examples I ever had was we have 3 children. My wife says she has 4, but together we have 3. And our middle son grabs me, both hands on the cheeks, and says, "Dad," and turns my head and said, "Dad, listen to me with your eyes." And, I've never forgotten it because I think it was Microsoft, but Times did that article on Microsoft doing a study of the attention span of adults. And humans, we've gone from 12 seconds to 8 seconds, and a goldfish attention is 9 seconds. So we're actually lower than a goldfish when it comes to attention. And honestly, Jason, I think it comes right back to positivity. Whether you call that encouragement or motivation, we are so drawn to that today because it's so rare.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I look forward to just unpacking this. I've got a lot of questions lined up, a lot of conversational points I want to get into you that I think is just going to add a lot of value to people. And that's what we want to do. That's what this podcast is about. Absolutely. Is just, trying to make a positive difference. And so let's help the audience get to know you a little bit. Give us about your background and why you're passionate about this and how you even got into all of this great work you're doing.
Well, my kids would say I went to school with granite and a chisel. I'm not that old, but we Fred Flintstone era. But um, one of the things, so I actually started out as a clergy in a mainline denomination. And one of the things that I always got tired of, one of my degrees is in psychology. So it was kind of a counseling hat. And I got tired of always treating ill, injured, whatever I'm supposed to call people who got a Charlie horse. And Jason, have you ever had a physical Charlie horse?
I had one in my leg a few times when I
Yeah.
played sports, but other than that, no.
Okay. And you remember what the coach would often say to us when we got that physical Charlie horse in the leg?
I know what mine told me. Walk it off.
Exactly. Yeah. Not helpful, not encouraging. And and
Suck it
and we're
up.
still doing that today. Like when we talk about adding value, what's the value we're trying to add? So I got caught on that and I got tired of doing Groundhog Day. And I said, okay, there's got to be a better way to approach this. So I started moving into what's called guidance counseling for young people, career counseling for adults, and then health settings like hospitals and workplaces that were going through layoffs and significant events. And then I saw the employee assistance programs always reacting, treating symptoms. And the root fire kept burning. And so there's two types of people, right? There's those that see the problems and talk about them, and there's those that, okay, let's do something. So I decided I want to try doing something. And so that's how I got into it. I got tired of reacting. And to your comment, to the listeners, you want to add value. That's where I approached it from. Okay. What's the values in this workplace? What are the values of the leader or leadership? How do we evaluate health or wellness when we don't know what the values are?
Hmm. That's a great question. Well, how are you defining? I mean, that's very interesting perspective. How do you define like workforce, workplace wellness, and what is that? What is that not? Um, Describe that a little bit so we can better understand your perspective there.
I steal the World Health Organization's definition of wellness or mental wellness. They describe it as a person who's naturally or through encouragement supports able to rebound from adversity and basically be in control of their own path forward. Now, they
Hmm.
word it far better than that, Jason. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
giving you John's translation of it.
Right.
Okay. And so when I define wellness, go to sports. Is the person in the right position on the team? Are they getting the right coaching to play that position to the best of their ability? When they get a Charlie horse, as life always gives us, somebody goes through a divorce. They got a relational Charlie horse, an emotional Charlie horse. Depending on their religious beliefs, they could be a spiritual Charlie horse. Instead of telling them to suck it up, walk it off, it doesn't hurt, helping people process that Charlie horse so that they can continue to play their game and grow forward.
Yeah. Well, talk to us about the trends of this. Is this type of thing, always been in the workforce in our life? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? Kind of what's your kind of expert perspective across the board from a trend perspective?
I and I don't want to sound like a politician, but I'd actually say it's both because historically we stunk at talking about this.
Hmm.
It was just suck it up. You got your pension, you got your benefits, quit your whining, you got a job, all the
Right, right.
cliches that the difference is with younger people, they're not staying at their jobs for pensions and benefits. So therefore, the whole conversation has shifted. And I'm not a millennial or generation anything other, but if I'm not going to stay at my job for pensions and benefits, Why should I stay?
Great question.
And until leadership start dealing with that question, the old model didn't work, because where pensions make all their money is people die too quickly after retirement and don't max out their pension. So yeah, you know what? Pensions make really good money because the person dies before they cash it all out. Younger people aren't staying for that, and kudos to them. Secondly, look at the adversity that different generations and cultures have experienced. So we don't know what is normal, what it means to, like, different age groups. Um, Proof is Veterans Day or Remembrance Day, and got 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds lying to go overseas during one of the wars. Okay, what's a traumatic event today? And I'm not getting into a philosophical discussion. I'm getting into a very
Yeah.
practical one. If I'm coming from a country, let me illustrate this. There's a woman who's teaching in a public high school, and it's in a community where it's a lot of English second language students. They tend to be refugees most often. They're coming from various countries, various cultures. And so she was talking with them about the brain and stress and those normal kinds of things. And she said, have you ever been super scared where you froze? And through Google
Hmm.
Translator on their phone, they're saying yes. Tank cannon pointed at me and my family. Another, and we're talking high school here, we're not talking
Wow.
adults. Another one said through Google Translator, yes, I stepped out of my house, and then he scrolled and pulled up a picture, and the house was bombed just as he stepped out the front door.
Wow.
And this teacher was thinking, super stressed, you know, failed a test, got a speeding ticket. Like, we're talking very different definitions of whatever I'm supposed to call that, resilience, mental health. The fact that those kids in high school are in high school is a statement to their character as a human being.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you go to other, being in the military for a number of years, I go to places all around the world and do military things that the government asked me to do. And you'd always go to these places, and they live third world,
Yeah,
kind of conditions. They don't have air conditioning, they don't have the internet half the time. They're lucky to get clean water. There's corrupt people. If they have a government, they're corrupt half the
yeah,
time, and they steal money and take food. And it's survival mode, right? They are appreciative of a clean pair of shoes, just basic things like
yeah,
not dying today, not being eaten by a wild animal, or just crazy things like that, right? And then
yeah,
you come back to America, and somebody's boss looks at them the wrong way, and it's the worst day ever, right? They're posting on Facebook, and
yeah.
their boss is a
So
jerk,
true.
and things just seem to be kind of exaggerated a lot today. And not to you know not to make light of people's challenges, but at the end of the day, okay, you're struggling, in your place of work or your life somehow, but in comparison to what? Like, you
Yeah,
made a reference to World War II. I mean, like, I was in the military and fought in Iraq and the Middle East, and kind of what I'll call the modern era. And
yeah,
yeah, there were tough conditions. When we invaded Iraq in 2003, we lived in really harsh conditions. I mean, like, no tents, like sleeping in foxholes, literally, right? And then after a couple weeks, we got some supplies. We built a few makeshift tents, and but we were eating vacuum packed meals We were living off the land. We didn't take showers for 3 weeks, right? I mean,
Mhm.
harsh, kind of
Yep.
austere conditions, but none of that compares to what happened in Europe in World War II and what people went through there. People like my grandfather and the
Yep.
atrocities that he went through didn't compare. It was just different. Not to make light of people's struggles and what have you, but compared to what, right?
And Jason, that's the key theme that is now landing on leadership,
Yeah.
which you have just put your finger on is one of the biggest stone in the shoe for leaders today. Because if you're my leader, whatever title you happen to have, if you're my leader and your definition of tough times is here, and by comparison, my definition of tough time is way down here, you are now going to feel, as a leader, you are going to now feel like, jeepers, am I a counselor? Am I a parent here? Am I a grandparent here? Like, what is my role here? And, and, and what you, I mean, don't get me wrong, you can't say that out loud, but, or too loudly, but what happens is when a workplace is not dealing and helping people establish those milestones, those benchmarks, so that they learn to develop their personal well being, the leader is always, always, always going to be babysitting
Yeah.
because there's no personal responsibility, right? Like if every time my feelings get hurt, I run to my boss, Jason, okay, where's my skin in the game?
Yeah. Personal accountability of everybody on the team. And
Yep.
so I think, are you seeing like a change in the role of leaders today? Not that leaders need to. Uh, let me back up. I want your perspective on the role of leaders. I'll give you some perspective of my own as a business coach and executive coach. Working out in places all around the world. Here's something I'm seeing more and more of.
Okay.
Leaders are scared to be leaders. They're scared to hurt somebody's feelings. They're scared to death somebody's going to go to HR and complain about them if they didn't do something just right or didn't please somebody, right?
Yep.
Like leaders are struggling with how to deal with the challenges of today. And it's not about a certain age group or generation or what. It's just the world we live in, just
Yep.
the pandemic, post-pandemic stuff, and everything that they kind of fell out of that, and where we are, and the workforce gaps and lack of people, and trying to cater to them and entice them to come in and stay. And it's like we're scared to be leaders, right? And I
Yep.
think you can be a good leader, a strong leader, and just have different conversations with people. But what are you seeing? I kind of, that's just my
Okay.
perspective. Am I wrong?
No, you're, I don't know what the cliche is. You're preaching to the choir, you're singing to the choir. And, and one of the, don't worry, I will not be singing because people start, oh, geez, somebody shoot that wounded animal. So I'm not going there. But one of the things that you put your finger on, Jason, that's really, really key for leadership to understand. If I'm a leader and I don't know what I am for and why, I will get steered by the strongest winds or currents.
Ooh, nice. I like that. That's good. That's true.
And I have no choice. On the other hand, if I know who or what I am for, I'm actually able to say to whomever, um, I'll call them Billy Bob or Susie Q, but I'm actually able to say to them, can you help me to understand? Because I just need to connect your perspective. Where my role as a leader is oriented is to navigate towards that focus, that destination, that direction. And your concern that you're bringing to me is about this. Can you help me to understand, please, how that concern fits into that focus? I just need your help to understand it.
Yeah. Powerful question.
Well, and as a coach, you get it. But one of the things that happens is, and this is where the old model of leadership, that ship is up on rocks. It's worse than a Titanic because it still looks like it's above water. And what happened with that model of leadership is you come to me, I tell you what to do. Well, one of the things that we as leaders have to shift is help them think about their thinking. And this sounds really arrogant, and I don't mean it that way. But one of the goals I have in any keynote speaking I do is lift people's heads to get them to think about their thinking. They may not like me. It doesn't matter. My goal is not to tell them what I think they should think. My goal is lift your head to think about the thinking. Because if you don't, as the leader, if you don't know where you're going, how is it possible for anybody to follow?
Yeah. Powerful. Powerful. So if you're out there and you're listening to the show and you're some kind of a leader, manager of an organization, John, how do they know whether they're well or not? How do they know whether they've got the right, mechanics going on? What are some of the signs and symptoms that are most identifiable to kind of tip people off? Is it just like a worst day ever, or is it some other
Okay,
things that
so
you're seeing?
I'm gonna use some dark humor, and I'm gonna count on some of your listeners understanding that as former military, dark humor is a survival skill. This dark humor, it comes from a funeral home director. And Mike's comment to me was, don't ever forget, John, all a guy needs is 6 close personal friends. And I didn't get it right away. And I said, I'm sorry, Mike, 6? And he said, yes. And he started to smile and he said, if you're going to be cremated, you only need 1. Exactly. And I've never forgotten it. So one of the first questions that the listeners need to ask is, who are your 6 pallbearers? Because if we do not have those 6 close personal friends, we will not be honest with the person we see in the mirror. And I'm not talking about you and I getting together to watch a football game or whatever ball game. That's not my definition of friends. A friendship is those kinds of people that we might only get together with once, maybe twice a year. But we don't spend any time wasted talking about the weather or sports. We get right into the weeds. We get talking about the things that really matter. And what starts to happen is those things under the surface become the things that get addressed. So, for example, one of my friends was, so John, you're always talking to people about wellness and so on and so forth. And when was the last time you and Carolyn, my wife's name's Carolyn, when was the last time you and Carolyn took a break for you and Carolyn? And those moments where all crickets seem really, really loud?
Had one of those, did you?
Yeah, I had. Yeah, and those crickets were screaming loud. And it's like, okay, enough is enough. And one of the things for listeners who are in the leadership role, who are those people who love you enough to speak the truth in love, which is actually ironic because that's how we feel love is to be disciplined. And discipline requires encouragement.
Yeah.
Punishment doesn't require encouragement. Discipline does. So who are those 6 people speaking truth into our life who love us enough to say what other people just go, this just kind of John, don't worry about it. But they are concerned about it because they want us to finish well in all of that meaning.
Yeah.
So, as a success, as a healthy person in our relationships, with a legacy, with a track record of being a person that people can actually respect.
Yeah. Yeah, you're talking deeper level kind of relationships, just seeing, Bob in the conference room and a couple of meetings during the week and you go to lunch once a month. I mean, that's nice. It's good, but who do you really connect to? Who do you really talk to about, your teenagers that are, acting up and smarting off to you? Who do you talk about when you get in a fight with your spouse? Who do you talk to when, as a leader, it's lonely at the top, right? I mean, you just
Yeah.
don't have a lot of people around you can go to. You may have a boss and you always can gripe and complain going up the chain, but you never gripe and complain going down the chain, right? But your boss isn't always available. They don't always want to hear it. And you're not always comfortable complaining to the boss. So you've got to have a circle of friends that you can, kind of have a safe place to kick back, drink a bourbon, sit around the campfire and just be honest with each other and tell jokes and rip on each other and like, no, that's BS, man. No, you didn't do that the
Yeah.
other day. You did, and just be real.
Yeah.
Just be
Well, and
real.
I actually have stolen from North American football, and I call it the very huddle. And
Okay.
so very, I spell differently. I spell it VERI. So values encouraged allow responsibility, so we take the initiative.
Nice. Like that.
And a huddle is where a group of people get together, put their heads and hearts together, and the rest of the world just sees their bums. So, who
I
is
love
in
it.
your very huddle that is going to encourage your values so you take the initiative in the areas you want to be responsible?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about American football and the huddle is once you break out of the huddle, then you have to do the blocking and the tackling and
Yep.
protect each other. And you're going to get bumped and bruised and beat up. And who's going to pull you up when you get knocked down? Who's going to, if you lose the game or you drop the ball or whatever, and you go to the locker room, who's gonna pick you back up and who's gonna take care of each other, right? It's, in the military, we called it, I was in the Air Force, so we called it a wingman, a battle
Yep.
buddy, people that you were accountable to, that you can look at them eyeball to eyeball and say, how are you today, John?
Yep.
And you're like, oh, I'm good. And you're like, BS. I can look at you and can tell you hadn't slept in 3 days. So how you doing? Right?
Well, and to your comment, Jason, on that, in first responders, when I'm doing this, I actually call it officer safety. Excuse me, because the premise is really simple. Just like a drunk driver at a motor vehicle collision, the drunk driver frequently is the one who walks away.
Yeah.
In the workplace, if my head is not in the game, and to quote your language, if I am your wingman and my head is not in the game, you might actually be the one who pays the price, not me.
That's true. That's very true.
And so, what's happening in the workplace is if the leader's head is not in the game, who's going to pay the price? Flip side, if people's heads are not in the game, who's going to pay the price?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is everybody else around them.
Just like a drunk and an MVC.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen situations from a leadership perspective, you go in and the leader is tired and frustrated and working 80-hour weeks and not focused, doesn't have a plan, can't articulate, priorities and goals, and is just themselves, kind of like you were talking about, you and your wife needing a vacation, and your friend recognized you hadn't been on some personal time to yourself to
Yep.
recharge those batteries, right? Leaders do that all the time. Like
Yep.
things are so crazy right now, and things are moving so fast. There's like the fear, they call it FOMO, right? The fear of
Yep.
missing out. Like a
Yep.
leader, especially mid-level management, there's a lot of fear with leaders that, like, if I'm not on top of things, or I miss an email, or I don't respond to the boss in 4.2 seconds, that they're going to think negative, like I can't hang and I'm not keeping up. And it's like some insecurities come through, right? And what they don't realize is that people feed off of that. We were talking about the goldfish analogy a little bit ago, right? Leadership is like living in a fishbowl, like a
Yep.
goldfish, right?
Yep. Sure is.
Everybody's watching everything you do, everything you say, your body language, your responses, just your tone of voice. I mean, every single thing. They pay attention to the car you drive to work, to the clothes you wear, to the
Hmm.
haircut you got. I mean, everybody's watching the leader. And if the leader's not in a good place and not smiling, not encouraging, not setting a quote unquote good example, everybody's going to pay the price. That's
Well, and
powerful.
and part of what you're describing is a lot of us don't understand our personalities. We were never taught how our wiring, our nature, I call it, because nurture
Yeah.
impacts our nature. We're not taught teaching people how our nature, our wiring, Myers-Briggs calls it type. There's true colors, there's all kinds.
Yep.
And if I don't understand mine, I can't help you understand my approach. Let me illustrate this. And when I do training, one of the first things I always start with is when I started doing training, I kept getting these evaluation forms back. John seems really angry. And so when I read the evaluation, yeah, now I'm angry. And so when I got some videos done to understand what was going on, I noticed on the videos, I knew I was nervous. I saw my nervousness on the video. Do you know what nervousness looks like? It's like a griever. Look like you're angry.
Hmm.
And so now all of a sudden I'm seeing this. They're seeing my nervousness, but hearing it as anger, or quote unquote, hearing it as
Yeah.
anger. So one of the ways, because that's my personality type, I'm not one of those, well, you can do it. I'm not wired that way.
Yeah.
It's so one of the first things I start my training with is I tell them that story, and I will say, I'm nervous because I want to do an excellent job. So therefore, if you don't see me smiling, let me turn this around. Let's get the smile off the table. Okay, now we're good. We got the smile. You've seen my happy face. And Jason, what you're doing right now is exactly what happens. They start laughing, and then when they hear my dry humor and I don't smile, they now have permission to laugh because I've taught them I'm not one of those types of people who will spend a half an hour laughing at his own comments.
Yeah.
But the best part about it is when I do that, I always, always, always get people say, oh, you just described what happens to me, or you just described
Yep.
what happens to my colleague at work all the time. And now we're having a discussion around understanding perceptions, encouragement, and all those soft skills, which are actually the hard skills to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. You mentioned there's some great tools out there. Myers Briggs, True Colors are all good. I use DISC in my
Disc.
practice, and leverage that in many ways. But that's true, right? How, so if you're military person or first responder, a lot of those people are in DISC terms, high Ds. They're kind of
Yeah.
the go-getter, no
Just the
nonsense
flesh
kind of
wound.
people. Yeah, exactly. Right. They're the type A kind of personalities. And so
Yeah.
you just have to understand that's just kind of how they are. Like, Tiger Woods, golfer, is a high D, right? He's just
Yeah.
very competitive and focused, and he looks kind of mad and
Mhm.
disconnected. He's not like a people kind of guy, right? And people are like, yeah, he's kind of a jerk. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
that's how he's wired.
Yeah.
You go into like engineering firms, technology firms, a lot of those people are high C's, you know meaning they are more analytical, very technical, very kind of dry sometimes, very serious and focused on the evidence and the facts, and they don't BS around too much with you, don't really, they're kind of introverts, right? And you just have to know there's nothing wrong. That's just how they are, and how to
And
navigate around that.
and one of the things that you put your finger on is where we judge people.
That's right.
Because if it's a female that's high D, that's an entirely different discussion than a male.
Yep.
Added
Sometimes
to
is.
that,
Yep.
a male that is high S, very sensitive, very
Yep.
specialist oriented, very warm, fuzzy, kumbaya kind of person, he will be judged because he's not what whomever says that he or she should be. And this is the key of leadership. If I don't know how I'm wired, I'm going to be always reacting to what you are implying, whoever the you
Yeah.
is.
Well, that's a great point. I want to transition a little bit as I've read some things, even though I haven't read the whole book. I've read some things around your book, and some of the key takeaways I've taken from some of your great work you've been doing out there. And it's talking about crisis, right? Things, because a lot of these things we're talking about are evident, and the world is spinning faster and faster and faster. They claim, the futurists of the world claim, more change will happen in the next 15 years than the past 150 combined. And so you take the current conditions of our economy, politics, the frequency and the rate for which we're changing holistically, and things, like everything's like the news, you turn on the news and there's breaking news, crisis in the Middle East, and
Yeah.
everything's a crisis, right? And so talk to us about why things are that way and becoming more so.
First of all, and I don't want to make it sound simple, it's not, but
Yeah.
it's not complicated. If if I don't want to deal with crisis, we have created, there was an old book years and years ago, it was called The Red Badge of Courage.
Oh yeah. That's a
We
great book.
we have given people a badge of courage, leadership, and we call it busy. And if you want proof, watch what happens when somebody says, "So are you busy?" Respond with, "No, not at all." What? What do you mean? Are you okay? Like, is your business okay? Yeah, no. Busy implies I'm steered by other people's demands and expectations. My schedule is full. I'm not busy. And part of the shift that must happen from crisis, which is reactionary, means I have to decide, am I going to live busy? And busy is a badge of honor, leadership, because
Hmm.
a leader who's not busy is a leader who's not doing his or her job.
Well, I find it so ironic that every time you ask somebody today, how are you doing? How's business? How's life treating you? Whatever form of question you want to put that in, you get two responses. Oh, I'm good. Family's good. Work is good, and busy. Good and busy, right? I'm like, well, if everybody says that every time you ask them, then why is suicide rates going up? Why
Yeah.
aren't people staying in their jobs more? Why are people,
That's right.
more depressed? Why are more people on medication? Why are more people overweight? Why are the results different than what everybody says,
And that's where, so crisis by definition has four components. Three are the ones that we use all the time: sudden, unexpected, impacting long-term goals, those normal kinds of things, threat to oneself. But it's the fourth definition that's really important. And that is, it is that point when the old can no longer be maintained and something new must be done.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And if change is not required, then call it for what it is. It's a failure. So because we worship success today as a society, nobody, you never admit to anybody, I'm a failure or I failed at something. So combine that with the reactionary, reactive approach to things. So what are we changing towards? Well, as a leader, there's only one person who can define that for the leader. Nobody else.
That's right. That's right.
There's nobody else that can do that. And that's where, I mean, my grandma, the wisdom that comes from that age group, I'll never forget her saying, well, you know what busy means, John? No, I don't. Buried under Satan's yoke. And I've never forgotten that, because what a beautiful visual of what busy means. I'm steered by all these other non-important demands, and my own focus just went the way of the dodo.
I'll be dang. I haven't heard that definition of busy, but I like it. I'm going to write it down. Can I quote unquote steal it from you?
Absolutely. Best form of play, best form of a compliment, right? And
Oh,
one of the things, Jason, that's going to be really important for the listeners, and if they want to have a chat, shoot me an email. But one of the things that's really important for a leader to understand is we can't adjust, we can't control the wind, we can't control currents and trends and all those other things. However, we can define the destination on the far shore that we want to sail towards. If a leader is not doing that, and that might mean this is not the right organization for me to work for, that's fine. But you're growing forward now instead of reacting. And I'll go right back to what's called the Serenity Prayer. It's the AANAGA prayer. Change what we can, accept what we can't, and the wisdom to know the difference. If I don't know what I'm sailing towards, I'm going to be trying to change things that are not under my control.
very powerful. There's couple things that came out that I really connected with in some of your work you've been doing, in under crisis and what crisis is and isn't, and some of your studies for over 30 years of study in this area. And I want you to talk about this for a minute. There were 2 points that you brought out. One, in crisis is normally never a real, true crisis. And two, events create opportunities for real leadership to emerge. Talk to us about that. Share some kind of stories and examples of what you
Sure.
mean by that and where you've seen this play out.
I'll use a small business. He bought a business. Well, he had his own. He bought an additional business. So whatever you want to call that, growth through takeover kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
acquisition. Yeah.
acquisition. That's the term I was looking for. And anyways, he also inherited one employee that did not play well with others. And so what we ended up doing was getting caught, or what he ended up doing was getting caught, always reacting to things that this person had done. And and trying to mop up, trying to do pickup, and try to do those other pieces.
Damage control.
Damage. That's exactly what it was. It was damage control.
Yeah.
And so he called me one day, and I can't remember what the call was about, but he asked me something, and it was kind of a simple fix. And I just said, and it was a Teams meeting, and I just said, Paul, you may not like me, you may never talk to me again, and I can live with that. But you are not looking really healthy right now. You are looking like your battery is, if it's not in the red, it's really close in the yellow. He started to laugh and he said, John, I knew this was going to happen when we did a virtual meeting like this. And that's why I was thinking I should probably call him. And I said, why? So you didn't get called out? And he said, yeah, pretty much. And I asked, so what's going on, Paul? What's draining your battery? And he told me about this situation. And I just said, okay, I'm going to be a jerk. Why is this person a problem? Other than your opinion, why is this person a problem? And he went through a whole bunch of the why that, their person was about control, command and control. It was knowledge hoarding instead of knowledge sharing. And I said, okay, I'm going to be a stupid card. Why is knowledge hoarding a problem for you? Well, because I want to grow a collaborative team where people want to play well together. So does this person fit being a strong team member? Well, no. When you put it that, I said, hold it. I didn't put it anyway. You said you wanted to build a strong team. You described this person as knowledge hoarding. So we started talking about his why behind what he wanted to do in his business. Long story short, as soon as we started flushing out some of where he wanted to grow and why he wanted to grow in that direction, it was immediate. He said, I know why I need to call this person. I'm going to have this meeting done by the end of this week. And I said, okay, how long has it taken you to get to this point? And he said, I've been stressed about this for a year and a half. And it was word of mouth. It was a small town book of business that he had taken over. He was concerned about gossip and all the other things. And I just checked in on him. I think it was last week. I might be lying. It might be 2 weeks ago, but whatever. And I just said, so just curious, how much business have you lost because you dealt with that person? And he laughed and he said, we literally just talked about it. We've actually gained clients. We have lost nobody.
Wow.
And I had another situation where the CEO was dealing with an employee whose head was not in the game. And we got chatting and she asked me if I would meet with him. And I said, sure. We started walking through with this young man. We started walking through all the things that were draining his battery. And I said, okay, so just curious, what's charging your battery? And I said, I'm not a mechanic, but if you leave a dome light, not on the new vehicles because they have battery savers, but if you leave a dome light on in the old cars, usually it was the coldest night of the year because the next morning all you get is that click, click, click.
Yep.
But I said to him, I said, so you got these dome lights running off your battery. What's charging? What's your alternator? What is charging your battery? And he started to laugh and he said, you just made me feel really stupid. That was not my intention. I apologize. No. That's not a criticism. You just named something that I never actually even thought of that way. Let me turn that around, Jason. Think about you and your clients, customers, maybe some of you listening right now. Just make a list out of all the things that are draining your battery. Now, how many things are charging our batteries?
Wow. Most people I interact with will struggle with that answer. In fact, I'd probably argue that 80 to 90%, if not more, people in the world today, certainly in North America, struggle with that today. If they were really honest with themselves. Yeah.
And you know what? That goes back to the six close personal friends. But one of the things that you're putting your finger on is, why are we always busy reacting to crises? Because for me to be thinking about charging my battery means I'm going to have to stop reacting and start proacting or responding, whatever you want me to call
Yeah.
that. And that and don't miss it, listeners. Jason can see me right now, but you listeners, do not misjudge me. I think growing up stinks. I hate being an adult. I want to be a child. I don't want to be responsible for anything. But that four-letter word of being an adult called discipline is, I have to be mindful of what I am doing to keep a charge in my battery, because the world is not going to care that John's battery is getting drained.
That's right. That's right. John, very powerful, kind of down to the heart and soul kind of level um, knowledge today. I mean, man, you really kind of cut through the noise and really got down on a level with people. And so as we kind of wrap up today, John, think about the top three things. If you're a leader out there, a manager out there, you're running a business, or you're, some form of influencer in an organization with lots of responsibility, and there's, kind of this feeling of constant reacting, constant tiredness, constant putting out dumpster fires, and you're certain people, the old Pareto principle, you're going to spend 80% of your time with 20% of the people that need whatever, right?
Yeah.
If you are out there and you're listening to this, and you are, frustrated, you're tired, you're worn out, you keep having the same conversations, and you feel like you're taking one step forward and two steps back, and you're in quote unquote crisis mode, John, what are the top three things that people really need to understand the most coming out of this podcast that they can implement immediately today, that can help them the most get on the right track?
First, list out 7 to 10 things that you are thankful for, that you are grateful for. Because those are the things that will charge our batteries, by the way. List out 7 to 10 things that you're grateful for. Second step, where in your calendar are those 7 to 10 things where your focus is just on them? And third, life is not a solo sport. Who's on the field? Who's in your boat? Who's rowing with you? Because if a leader believes that he or she can do this and be successful alone, they are smoking for more than medicinal purposes. And
Yeah.
I mean that, because the hardest thing, we have taught people not to use four-letter words, Jason. And part of what's happened is love, care, all those other things. But what the biggest problem with leaders finishing well is, we bought into not using the four-letter word help.
Ooh, yeah, that's a great four-letter word.
And help doesn't mean I'm broken and I'm all messed up. Help means I got enough backbone, I got enough intestinal fortitude to say, my battery's getting a little too close to the red. It's time I got some chargers and not talking about a football team. It's time I got some Chargers in the boat with me.
Yeah. Yeah. That is great advice. I love your top three. I think people, it's actionable, it's real, it's just down to earth, practical things people can take and implement today.
Oh,
Write down those 7 things, program stuff on your calendar, which means you got to be proactive. You got to be out in front of these things. You know, and then have people with you. Life is about relationships, and
yes, it
you
is.
don't need to know everybody. You don't need to be best friends with every Tom, Dick, and Harry you come in contact with, but there are certain people that you will come in contact with that you'll connect with, and develop those relationships, and those relationships will mean your success as you go through. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when
Yeah.
you go through a bad time, or you have an employee issue, or a death in the family, or a crisis, a real crisis, an automobile accident, or
Yeah.
something bad or negative happens that creates a bad day for you. Everybody needs somebody, right? You cannot go through life trying to, carry the world on your shoulders all the time.
No.
You'll collapse under the pressure.
And what makes it worse is if we collapse under the pressure, it's actually going to be the people that we say matter the most who will pay the price.
Yeah,
Like
that's
if
right.
I'm draining my battery with work related, with stress related, with all these other things, stuff, and I put my family up on an altar and sacrifice them, then my battery gets in the red. Hopefully they're willing to stick around after I burn the bridge.
Yeah, well, that's a powerful image there, John. John, thank you so much for your time today. I know you're busy. You work with a lot of folks all
No, I'm
over the
not
world.
busy. We had this discussion that no, I'm not busy. It's full. I'm not
All
busy.
right.
Okay.
You help a lot of people in a lot of different ways, as we kind of discussed on this podcast, and it's just a real privilege to get to know you, and be able to take some of this great knowledge and experience that you've accumulated. For folks out there, his book is "Run Into the Roar." That's kind of
Actually,
be
it's run
Oh, I'm
toward the
sorry.
roar.
Towards the war. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's fine.
I misspoke there. Thank you for correcting me. Highly encourage you. I've looked at everything around this, and kind of the prelude of this, and it really looks like a great book. I'm excited to read. I'm gonna order it here this week. John, you do a lot of great things out there in this world. If people want to learn more, if they want to connect with you, if they want to work with you, if they want to follow up with questions after listening to the podcast, tell people how they can get a hold of you.
The easiest way and the simplest way is just an email, John with an H, JOHN, at fortlog.co. And let me explain the name. Fort, safe place in the frontier. You got to have a vision and end zone. You got to know where you're going. And a log is a journal to help others sail the sea, because there's no point going there alone. And the .co, because I work with people, colleague, coach, collaborator. It's not a .com, it's a .co. So John at fortlog.co.
I like
The
it.
other option is just a simple landing page. Jump on the landing page, fortlog.co/Soar Hire, and let's have a conversation. Let's book that time and just talk, because one of the things that matters most to me is I want you to finish well. And that applies to you, Jason, as a host, as a father, as a business person. But it also applies to the listeners. I know I'm not physically able to help everybody, but it's like that old Clairol commercial. If each one of us helps or tells one other, and then we help or tell one other, it's that compounding, and 2 becomes 4, and 4 becomes 16, and
That's
so on
right.
and so forth.
Pebble in the pond effect. You know,
Pebble in the pond.
you affect one person, and those ripples will go
Yep.
out very very far, and hopefully make the world a better place at some point. So, John, thank you so much. We're also going to put, as we always do, all of your contact information, things like that, in the show notes
Okay.
of the podcast, which is also on video with YouTube and on all the regular audio channels out there as well. So we'll have all that in the show notes. People can reach out and connect with you further.
That'd be
That's it for
phenomenal.
today, folks.
No, and Jason, thank you. I really value the conversation we had, and blessings to you for your leadership.